Resentment born of the gathering of heaven and earth, zombie, tempered by thunder tribulation, can achieve immortality. Upon hearing Pax's introduction, Nicholas was greatly shocked. He never thought that there were so many different interpretations of zombies. It seems that I need to study hard. Otherwise, I might not even recognize all the ghosts I encounter in the future. That would tarnish my hard-earned reputation. Upon hearing this, Pax seemed to remember something and joked. I heard that last time, Liliana picked out a lot of typos in the love letter you wrote to her. It looks like you really need to study hard. Nicholas couldn't help but blush with embarrassment. Just as he was about to explain, he was interrupted by a gentle female voice. Can you now tell me about the issue Pax just mentioned? Pax saw Claire smile happily immediately. Of course you can. Seeing this, Nicholas also very tactfully walked away. Afterwards, Pax and Claire leaned against the big tree. He gently began to explain the question. It's not as complicated as you think. You just need to draw an auxiliary line. As he spoke, he wanted to ask Claire if she understood. But as soon as they raised their heads, the two of them immediately locked eyes affectionately. A blush instantly appeared on their faces. Their heartbeats and breaths quickened slightly. Pax stared blankly at Claire. His eyes couldn't help but twitch a few times. It wasn't until a moment later that he reacted. He quickly dodged backward in embarrassment. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Upon hearing this, Claire blushed and said coyly, It's okay, you don't need to worry about it. But soon, the two of them finished explaining the topic. Claire then reached out her hand and searched inside her backpack. She took out a carefully prepared cake and handed it to Pax. Pax, this is a cake I made myself. Thank you for helping me catch up on classes. Try it. If you like it, I'll make one for you every day in the future. Seeing this, Pax ecstatically took the cake hurriedly. Thank you, but I have nothing to give you. Before Pax could finish speaking, Claire shook her head to interrupt him. I don't want anything from you. I just hope you can explain the topic to me every day. At this moment, Pax seemed to have thought of something. He quickly took out the reverse scale of the Romanized flood dragon that was given to him by Roman from his pocket. This has been my amulet that has been with me since birth. For you. Claire's eyes suddenly lit up with surprise. Thank you. She took the reverse scale from Pax's hands as she spoke. I will keep it with me. And the two of them, who had exchanged gifts, undoubtedly grew closer. For a moment, the surrounding air was filled with a youthful and ambiguous atmosphere. But soon as the sun set, the sky gradually darkened. The two of them walked separately to their respective dormitories. But when Pax reached the downstairs, he suddenly heard someone calling his name, which terrified him. He looked around quickly but didn't see anyone. Who is calling me? At this moment, the voice came again. I have something to consult with you. Could you come to the backyard to find me at midnight tonight? Pax recognized the owner of the voice. It was the Taoist who had saved them in the mountains behind. He immediately agreed to come down. If the Taoist wishes to see me, of course we must meet. Then we must not miss our appointment. But strangely, in the deep night, the sky, which had been clear during the day, suddenly started to snow. Pax braved the wind and snow, arriving on time at the backyard alone. Then he called out softly, Taoist, I'm here, are you there? As his words fell, there was a profound silence with no one responding. Is it possible that the Taoist is not here? Just as Pax was filled with doubt and suspicion. Suddenly, there came a sound of ghostly aura drifting behind him in waves. He quickly turned his head to look. He saw the Taoist suddenly appear in the center of the courtyard. Behind him followed a large crowd of various ghosts, all staring intently at Pax in front of them. Pax was suddenly stunned by the scene. Why would so many ghosts suddenly appear at school? And just as he was in a daze, the Taoist standing in the center was cross-legged in midair. He began reciting the Tai Rescue Sutra for relief and salvation, to enlighten and save all beings and convert them to the path of heaven. Upon hearing the voice, Pax finally came to his senses. However, he was filled with confusion. When he saw the gentle white light emanating from the numerous ghosts, he finally understood. This Taoist, who had passed away many years ago, was unwilling to leave. It turned out that he was helping to guide these lost souls and wandering spirits. At this moment, a crowd of souls who had been guided expressed their gratitude to the Taoist by bowing and saying thank you. The Taoist spent 100 years guiding them. "We can finally rid ourselves of sins today and be reincarnated," they said. "We can only repay this great kindness and virtue in the next life." As the words fell silent, the souls instantly transformed into flickering green lights and scattered into the air. Watching the scene unfolding before him, Pax couldn't help but feel deep admiration from the bottom of his heart. At this moment, the Taoist turned his head towards him and said, "I have kept you waiting. The reason I invited you here tonight is to ask have there been any strange occurrences in Geo Village recently?" Upon hearing this, Pax was suddenly extremely astonished and asked, "Taoist, how did you know?" Afterwards, he recounted everything that had happened in the village from beginning to end. Taoist couldn't help but sigh after listening. It turned out that the ugly female Taoist was Taoist's junior sister. The skinless female corpse in the iron coffin was also created by her hands. And I'm afraid she has already mastered the complete five-ghost burial technique. Now that I am a ghost, I am no match for her. Taoist took out a yellowed ancient book from his pocket and handed it to Pax. Pax wanted to ask more questions, but was interrupted by Taoist. "I know what you want to say, but time is limited. My virtuous deeds have been fulfilled, and I am about to go to the netherworld to take up my post. So I can only be brief. This is what I have learned all my life. After you learn it, you will naturally be able to find my incompetent junior sister. And with the help of the 5 great mediums of immortals, dealing with her should not be difficult." The Taoist finished speaking and then turned and left. "I don't ask for anything else. I just hope that if possible, spare the life of my junior sister. Just don't let her soul scatter." As the words lingered and echoed in the air, the Taoist's body was shimmering with a dazzling light blue glow, slowly sinking into the ground. After the glow disappeared, only a compass and a small peachwood sword were left behind. Pax picked them up and couldn't help but look at the ancient book in his hand. On it were written several large characters. "The inner chapters of the Bio Pussy." He then returned to the dormitory. Pax lay on the bed and used a flashlight to read the contents of the book. He couldn't help but marvel at how extensive and profound the book was, as it contained a lot of content. From divine medicine formulas and supernatural transformations to health preservation and disaster prevention, this book records everything that should and should not exist. At this moment, Pax saw a Taoist techniques formula and found it very familiar. He immediately sat cross-legged on the bed and began to recite it. "Those skilled in warfare move the enemy while offering themselves in alignment." As the words fell, a halo suddenly appeared around Pax's body, enveloping him within. Nicholas on the bed was awakened by the light and couldn't help but curse angrily. "Who turns on the light while taking a dump?" Upon hearing this, Pax was startled and awakened from meditation. He quickly interrupted the spellcasting and realized that he was in the dormitory. However, for some reason, the content in this book is easy to learn. He feels like he has studied it before. Later, he laid down the ancient book and lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. Bringing this book back to the village, he would surely be able to catch that female Taoist as soon as possible. Time flies, and it was already the weekend in the blink of an eye. On this day, Pax, shouting inside the house, said, "Granny, come out and take a look at Gabriel. He came to pick me up today. I just realized that he had aged decades invisibly." Deaf Granny quickly rushed out of the house upon hearing the words. Seeing Gabriel's appearance, her face immediately changed color. His complexion was dark with a touch of red. This is the appearance of a malevolent spirit with blood overflowing on the face. What changes have occurred recently? Gabriel shook his head, indicating no changes had happened. "With the talisman you gave me, plus this antique jade, now we are unstoppable." After saying that, he even kissed the antique jade hanging on his chest. However, Nicholas, who was nearby, noticed the quality of the antique jade and was puzzled. Wasn't this thing originally light yellow? Why has it turned blood red? When he heard this, Gabriel glared at him. You don't understand a thing. There is a saying that people nurture jade for 3 years, and jade nurtures people for a lifetime. This shows that I have raised it well. But before Gabriel could finish speaking, the silent deaf granny suddenly pulled the antique jade necklace from his neck. Then she dropped the jade heavily on the ground. You dared to wear anything on your body. Gabriel is puzzled by deaf granny's angry tone. Doesn't she say that jade can ward off disasters? Upon hearing this, deaf granny's expression turned serious. She stared at the antique jade that was shattered on the ground and said, Ordinary jade can indeed ward off disasters. But yours is Een jade. Moreover, if you don't take off the most evil 9 apertures jade, people will die. Upon hearing this, Gabriel was suddenly filled with intense fear. What is the 9 apertures jade? However, deaf granny just calmly explained. The so-called 9 apertures jade refers to 9 pieces of jade artifacts used to seal the 9 apertures of the body when a person is buried. Ancient people believed that by doing so, they could prevent their bodies from decaying, have the opportunity to attain immortality, and even become immortal. Before deaf granny's voice fell, Gabriel quickly moved away from the shattered antique jade on the ground. How could such a bizarre thing happen? Nicholas, on the other hand, was very curious. Granny, is the one my dad is wearing a part of the 9 apertures jade? Hearing this, deaf granny couldn't help but shake her head and smile. This one looks like a cone. It should be used to plug the butt. Upon hearing these words, Gabriel couldn't help but think about how he often held jade close. He felt his stomach churn instantly. He was lying on the ground, vomiting wildly. Filial Nicholas didn't find it too big of a deal, and couldn't help but burst into laughter. Dad, so the thing you've been kissing is antique jade used to plug dead people's butts. This remark successfully ignited Gabriel's anger. After he finished vomiting, Nicholas couldn't escape being beaten up again. It was you, kid, who mocked me just now. Indeed, in the end, it was Nicholas who got hurt. But after beating up Nicholas, Gabriel was somewhat puzzled. Since this antique jade was found on a dead person, how could it appear in my family's mine? Deaf Granny pondered for a while, but couldn't figure out the reason. But just at that moment, Gabriel's phone at his waist suddenly rang. He hurriedly answered, but he had just heard what the person opposite said. Gabriel's face immediately turned pale. He was about to fall down. Luckily, Nicholas caught him just in time. Dad, what happened? Gabriel hesitated for a moment before saying with a dark expression, A mass grave was uncovered in our family's mine, which has alerted the government. Upon hearing this, Pax and deaf Granny behind him were stunned. But before the two could ask anything, Gabriel quickly ran towards the car outside the courtyard. I have to go back and take a look, he said. Nicholas, feeling uneasy, followed behind Gabriel, reminding him, Dad, remember to wear an amulet. Watching the father and son walk away, deaf Granny seemed to recall something. She turned to Pax and asked, Pax, you haven't said yet. What were you in such a hurry to come back for? At Pax's words, he took out the book, the inner chapters of the Biopussy that Taoist had given him. Granny, I was just about to tell you. Please contact the 5 great immortals. I have found a way to deal with that female Taoist. Night falls. The 5 great immortals and ghost immortal hemp-clad Granny sit around the stone table. Roman raised his glass respectfully and looked at Pax, not expecting Pax to find a clue so quickly. We are truly ashamed compared to him. Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help but awkwardly scratch his head. Roman, there's no need to belittle yourself. I just happened to be lucky. With a serious expression, Pax stood up. The mastermind behind this is none other than the female Taoist from before. Everything she did was to complete the practice of the 5 ghost burial technique. Upon hearing this, Roman couldn't help but feel suspicious. What is the 5 ghost burial technique? Upon hearing this, Pax's expression turned serious. He took out the inner chapters of the bio-puzzle given to him by the Taoist, and according to the records in this ancient book, the five-ghost burial technique is a secret art that prolongs life and enhances magical powers. She first needs to select a person to have their skin removed and tendons pulled out, then be tortured to death inside an iron coffin. The spellcaster uses the resentment rising to the heavens after her death for cultivation. She selected a burial site for the malevolent spirit under the white tiger again. This requires using human skin to make a lantern to bind the corpse and refine the soul. Finally, the spellcaster uses secret art to control the ghost. Personally, they kill a close blood relative of the deceased. This is why Thomas, after death, would bite his own son Kai, resulting in a corpse revival. They are a family torn apart by bloodshed, with the lineage coming to an end. In this way, the five ghosts will harbor resentment that reaches the heavens. The caster will then absorb the resentment of the five ghost again. The five ghost burial technique is considered complete. Not only is the primary body extremely fierce, but it can also control the five ghosts to help itself. As long as one ghost is not eliminated, the caster can be reborn on the spot by borrowing a corpse. After listening to Pax's explanation, Roman couldn't help but sigh. The fact that the ghost Taoist was able to perform such a heinous secret art right under our noses without us noticing is truly shameful. If we don't find her and completely eliminate her, how can we still have the face to be worshipped by others? But before Roman could finish his sentence, hemp-clad Granny smashed the anger-filled pipe pot onto the stone table. A strong ghostly aura suddenly erupted from her body. Whether it's a secret art, I don't care. But she should never have provoked Pax. She really doesn't know the severity of the situation. Daring to use my granddaughter's human placenta to practice secret art, if I don't extract her soul and refine it. Granny, wouldn't my 9,800 years of spiritual practice be in vain then? Andrew was puzzled about how to find the hiding place of the ugly female Taoist. We immortals have turned the Geo village upside down, but could not find any trace. Does Pax have a way to find the ghost Taoist? Upon hearing this, Pax simply smiled and nodded. Of course I have a way. I was just thinking of asking for everyone's help. Saying that, Pax took out the ritual implement compass that the Taoist left him from his pocket and placed it on the table. Afterward, he pointed his hand seal to his brow center. 5 ghosts chased and captured alluring hidden treasures. I follow orders to seek profit and avoid famine. With a spoken command, the spinning pointer abruptly stopped and pointed south. Pax looked around and said slowly, All immortals, follow the direction pointed by the compass, and you will find the ghost Taoist. Upon hearing this, Luke couldn't help but laugh. Long time no see. Pax, your Taoist techniques have impressed us all. As soon as he finished speaking, the immortals turned into streaks of light, and swiftly flew southward in search. Eighth Master also wanted to go, and see what was happening. But he was kicked back by Roman. Connor, you take Pax to protect him. We'll leave first. Upon hearing this, Eighth Master sat on the ground and couldn't help but complain. Even watching the fun requires me to do some heavy lifting. Despite his complaints, Eighth Master still dared not disobey the orders of the boss. He immediately silently recited an incantation to summon his true form. A gust of demonic wind blew by, and suddenly, a python tens of meters long appeared in front of Pax and the two. Pax, I will carry you to find Ghost Taoist. Without waiting for Pax to respond, he wrapped his tail around him and placed him on his back. Just as the snake and Pax were about to set off, Nicholas climbed onto the snake's tail and shouted, Eighth Master, wait for me. I also want to go, take me with you. The Eighth Master was also helpless when he saw this. After all, he was Pax's brother. Bringing you along is fine. But please don't talk nonsense on the way. However, at that moment, a voice suddenly came from under the Eighth Master. Hold on, Pax. Pax looked down and saw that it was Fox Patriarch, feeling puzzled as to why he didn't leave with the other immortals. The Patriarch did not respond. Instead, he took out a small fox from his arms. I have a favor to ask. Could you please have Pax take her along? Looking at the little fox in the patriarch's hand, Pax was very puzzled by what it meant. It turns out that this white fox is his granddaughter. She had her leg injury cured by Pax a few days ago. She came here specifically to express her gratitude. Faye, please show yourself and thank Pax properly after he finished speaking. The little fox immediately turned into a wisp of green smoke. A curvaceous and charming young woman slowly emerged from the smoke. She shyly bowed to Pax. Faye pays respect to her benefactor, she said. Seeing this, Pax couldn't help but blush in embarrassment. It's just a small gesture. No need to be so polite, he said. However, Nicholas and Eighth Master next to him couldn't help but stare at Faye with fascination, almost drooling. She's so beautiful, even more beautiful than Claire. Seeing Nicholas in such a disheveled state, Pax quickly spoke up to stop him. Nicholas, please control yourself, Pax said. Close your mouth and behave. When Faye heard Nicholas' words, she just smiled faintly, seemingly indifferent. In fact, Faye had long wanted to serve by Pax's side, hoping that Pax would not reject her. Seeing this, the fox patriarch behind her also nodded with a smile, his eyes full of anticipation. But Pax repeatedly waved his hand to reject these words, because he felt that having a girl by his side would be very inconvenient. Miss Faye's kindness is well received, he said. Hearing Pax's words, Nicholas was immediately driven up the wall. He thought, how can you not want such a beautiful girl to follow you? Are you stupid? But the fox patriarch was determined to cling to Pax's thigh. What's so difficult about that? He said confidently, waving his big hand. In an instant, Faye turned back into the appearance of a little white fox. She immediately leaped onto Pax's shoulder. Then she gently rubbed her head against Pax's face. She looked at him with eager eyes. Seeing this, Pax had no choice but to reluctantly agree. Not long after, everyone left the village and arrived at a mass grave. Pax held the ritual implement compass to search for the hiding place of the 5 ghosts. At first, the pointer of the compass was spinning wildly. But when Pax walked to a large tomb, the compass pointer stopped and pointed inside. This should be it. But before Pax could speak a word, the large tomb suddenly burst open. Startled by the unexpected movement, Pax took a few steps back in fear. He looked ahead in terror. The female ghost clad in red looked ferocious. Slowly crawled out from the cracked tomb mound. Behind her, there were 4 corpses of 3 generations of the Thomas family closely following, all with blood flowing from their 7 orifices, staring intently at Pax. At this moment, the red-clad female ghost suddenly took notice. Pax, you brat, how come my junior brother's ritual implement compass is in your hands? Quickly tell me where you have seen him. But upon hearing the red-clad female ghost's questioning, Pax did not give her a good expression. Who do you think you are? Why should I tell you? Upon hearing that, the red-clad female ghost immediately became extremely angry. Her arms stretched out, bloodthirsty mouth wide open, and she pounced towards Pax. You brat, you're looking for death. However, at that moment, a gray shadow flashed by. Accompanied by a cracking sound, the red-clad female ghost's arm was immediately severed. At the moment when the gray shadow appeared, it was a giant rat measuring 2.5 meters in length. The moment he landed, he turned into Andrew's appearance. He then smirked and stared at the red-clad female ghost. Although your flesh stinks, luckily, my family's lowly status means we're not picky eaters. At this moment, Pax looked at the red-clad female ghost with confusion. Wasn't it said that this ghost Taoist was a very ugly woman? But looking at her appearance, she is not ugly at all. Are you deliberately instigating Thomas's ancestor to skin that concubine just to replace it with your own? It seems that being called an ugly female Taoist by them has always been on your mind. The female ghost, upon hearing someone say she is an ugly female Taoist, grimaced in pain and let out eerie laughter. She angrily reached out her rotten ghost hand and fiercely grabbed towards Pax's head. You brat seeking death! This sudden scene caught Pax off guard, leaving him with no time to dodge in this moment of danger. Seeing this, Roman quickly dodged and arrived by Pax's side. With a wave of his hand, he easily blocked the female ghost's attack. "Dare to touch Pax, and I will make sure you perish today." Roman's casual strike, however, dealt a heavy blow to the female ghost. Seeing the unfavorable situation, with a swoosh, she flew into the air. Her long hair danced in the chilly wind, revealing a grim, pale face. "If you want me dead, you won't have it easy either. 5 ghosts listen to my command. Kill all these people." Under the order of the female ghost, the 4 lifeless bodies suddenly became violent, roaring like wild beasts. They moved abruptly and rushed towards Pax, trying to grab him to threaten the other immortals. However, how could all the immortals not see through the intentions of the female ghost? They immediately appeared in front of Pax. "You dare to have designs on Pax, you are looking for death." As soon as the words fell, the irritable Luke took the lead in taking action. He grabbed one of the corpses. Then, he forcefully tore it in half on the spot. Originally with a kind smile, Asher was unwilling to fall behind. He used his hand as a blade and flew to cut it down. Just a flash of red light passed by. He then cut the other body into 2 pieces. The female ghost saw such a brutal scene and immediately had the idea of wanting to escape. But just as she turned around, Roman had already set his eyes on her. Just lifting his left hand slightly, an illusion of the flood dragon appeared out of thin air. It slowly contracted around the female ghost, wrapping her tightly and rendering her unable to move. All she could do was emit waves of agonizing wails in helplessness. Hemp-clad Granny saw the female ghost in such a miserable state. A sneer appeared on her face involuntarily. "Your iron coffin was taken by Granny long ago. The 5 ghost burial technique failed. How do you plan to oppose us now?" The female ghost, seeing the inevitable defeat, no longer resisted. She put on a look of submission, as if willing to be killed or spared at the listener's discretion. Seeing the situation, Roman respectfully turned his head to look at Pax, asking Pax to make a decision. Upon hearing this, Pax hesitated for a moment. "I had promised the Taoist not to let her soul scatter, but I'm afraid she will harm others again, and doing so may put Alice in danger." But before Pax could finish speaking, the female ghost, upon hearing the Taoist, became frantic again. She struggled continuously, yelling loudly at Pax. "Have you truly seen my senior brother? Why is he hiding and refusing to see me?" Andrew, on the side, saw the female ghost being caught and still dared to be so arrogant. Immediately, he viciously kicked her in the head. Then he stared at her with a cold expression. "Quiet down. Don't scare Pax," he said as he kicked the female ghost. She did quiet down considerably. At that moment, the hemp-clad Granny approached the female ghost with a smile. "Leave Pax and Alice to me," she said. After saying that, she extended her ghost hand with long, glossy black nails, and suddenly tore open the female ghost's belly. Amid the opponent's piercing screams, she took out a wriggling mass of flesh and blood. Then she handed it to Pax. Fortunately, Alice's human placenta was not melted. As long as it is taken back and buried under the big pine tree, it can ensure my precious granddaughter will be safe and sound in the future, living a long and healthy life. Upon hearing this, Pax was overjoyed and thanked Granny profusely. Without the human placenta and the secret art being broken, the female ghost, who is on the verge of death, has weakened. But Pax couldn't help but hesitate when he looked at her. Should he kill or not? Just as Pax was feeling hesitant, the Yellow family patriarch suddenly stands before her. "Pax has a compassionate heart and promised the Taoist not to harm you. But you have harmed my descendants. Today, I will make this decision for him." He then raised his sharp claws and attacked the female ghost. With a sharp sound, a terribly tragic scream suddenly resounded through the sky. Seeing this, the people present were all shocked. They thought that once this claw came down, the red-clad female ghost would surely be frightened out of her wits. Charles, however, stopped his hand in time. It only left a blue and white claw mark on his face. "I spare your life today for Pax's sake. but I will make everyone see your true face." With that, he grabbed the hair of the red-clad female ghost and pulled it hard. A complete piece of human skin was immediately peeled off from the female ghost's body. The female ghost, who lost the support of the human skin, quickly shrank in size. In no time, she turned into a deformed dwarf. Seeing this, Pax couldn't help but be extremely surprised. "I didn't expect this to be your true appearance. No wonder your senior brother would avoid you." Even though the female ghost has turned into this appearance, she is still shouting arrogantly, "You'd better kill me, otherwise one day, sooner or later, I will definitely come back and kill all of you." Upon hearing this, Roman did not take the threat of the female ghost to heart. "You have done so many evil deeds, completely losing your decency. Even if we spare you, the retribution from the Hell Guards will not spare you. Wait for your punishment in the underworld." Pax on the side was also caught off guard. This female ghost dared to be so arrogant. Clenching his fists in resentment, he said, "If I hadn't promised the Taoist, I would really want to kill you right now. But the fate will have its way. I will spare your life for now. If you harm others again, I will ensure your soul disperses." After saying that, he turned around and left with the other immortals. The female ghost watched as they walked away into the distance. She roared hysterically, "One day, I will skin you alive, extract your tendons, crush your bones, and scatter your ashes." Then she sat cross-legged on the ground, chanting a spell. "Evil spirits, listen to my command. Flesh and bones pave the way, ghosts and demons move forward." As she finished speaking, the 4 bodies of Thomas's 3 generations immediately exploded. Meanwhile, the evil ghosts under the mass grave were breaking out of the ground one after another. They scrambled to grab the scattered pieces of flesh from the ground and stuff them into their mouths. The leader of the evil ghosts was the old decapitated lady who had intercepted Ian and Pax many years ago. The female ghost, weak and angry, rebuked them. "Ignorant fools, don't eat that. Hurry up and take me away from here." Upon hearing this, the evil ghost hurriedly ran to the side of the female ghost, lifting her up, and ran in chaos towards the depths of the mountain. On the other side, the moon hung high in the sky. Everyone had returned to Deaf Granny's house. They gathered around the stone table. Pax raised his wine glass first. "Thanks to all the immortals for their help this time. Not only did you save my sister Alice, you also resolved a major problem for my family." Upon hearing this, Roman smiled and shook his head. "Pax, there's no need to be so polite. It was thanks to your profound Taoist techniques that we were able to easily find the ghost Taoist this time." As soon as he finished speaking, Nicholas beside him also turned into a little fanboy, his eyes shining as he looked at Pax. "Big bro Pax, you're so cool today. I also want to learn these powerful techniques." He quickly ran back into the house and brought out all the snacks he had cherished for many years. Then he walked up to hemp-clad Granny and said, "Granny, last time you said you would take me as your disciple. I don't want to die, but I really want to learn. Can you please make an exception?" "I can give you all my pocket money and snacks." Hemp-clad Granny did not respond. She just picked up the snacks on the table, smelled them under her nose, nodded approvingly, and said, "This thing really smells good." Seeing this, Nicholas was puzzled and asked, "Granny, do you consider just smelling it as eating?" Hearing this, hemp-clad Granny smiled kindly and said, "Of course. I'll take this as an offering from you. Since I quite like this thing, I'll reward you accordingly." But before hemp-clad Granny could finish her sentence, Nicholas couldn't help but interrupt in excitement. "So, Granny, are you agreeing to teach me techniques?" But the next second, hemp-clad Granny declined him. "It's impossible to teach you techniques of ghost spiritual practice with your pure yang body." Upon hearing this, Nicholas couldn't help but sigh. "It's boring. If you don't want to teach, just don't. Why bother coming up with so many excuses?" However, before Nicholas could finish his sentence. Hemp-clad Granny promised Nicholas that after he died, she would betroth him to 8 red-clad female ghosts as his wives. Upon hearing this, Nicholas looked forlorn and his face turned red. "Really, Granny?" He then pulled Pax next to him and boasted, "After I die, I will have 8 beautiful daughters-in-law. Are you envious?" This left Pax speechless. "Look at the smug look on your face. Let go of me quickly, don't claim you know me." Seeing this scene, everyone couldn't help but burst into laughter. After all, the matter of Ghost Taoist had been completely resolved. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 2 months have passed. On that day, Pax and Nicholas stayed in the dorm room. One was studying while the other was snacking. Just then, Nicholas's phone rang suddenly. As soon as he answered, he heard Gabriel's urgent voice on the other end. "Son, there is a big problem at our house. The inspector has already asked for leave along with the principal. Come back with Pax quickly." Upon hearing this, Nicholas suddenly stood up in fright. What could have happened that Dad is so anxious? But Gabriel hung up before answering. Pax overheard their conversation and also felt that something was off. Could it be that Granny had an accident? Nicholas was also in a panic upon hearing about Granny. "What are we waiting for? Let's go quickly." Later, the two of them got in the car and left the school. However, they didn't drive towards Deaf Granny's house. Instead, they arrived at a mine near Nicholas's house. Nicholas was puzzled when they got off the car. "Granny is in a hurry over there. Why did you bring us to the mine?" But before Nicholas could finish speaking, Gabriel immediately drove off in anger. "Are you cursing Granny to have an accident, boy? There's something going on over here that requires your presence. Once we solve it, I'll deal with you." At this time, Robert, who was standing nearby, looked apologetic as he said to Pax, "Pax, you are still young and shouldn't be delayed in your studies. But this matter is too strange. I think it's the work of dirt spirits. However, I am reluctant to trouble Granny again. That's why I had to ask you to take a look." Upon hearing this, Pax couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it wasn't Granny who had an accident. Then he looked puzzled at Robert, wondering what had happened. However, Robert didn't answer, he just said casually, "Pax, you'll know when you go take a look." Before long, Robert arrived with a few people at the makeshift house built near the mine. When Pax saw the scene before him, he was stunned and stood still in shock. "What on earth is this?